Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. And from the thumbnail, you clicked right. We are actually going to be going through question 1 of the June 2021 mathematics paper 1. So without any further ado, let's get started, guys. Question 1, right? So for the whole of question 1, we are basically going to either be solving for x and solving for y. Okay, so question 1.1.1, we are given x squared minus x minus 20, which is equal to 0, and obviously we're solving for x. Okay, so it's x squared minus x minus 20, which is equal to 0. So the first thing we see here, guys, is that we have a quadratic equation. Guys, the first thing we can see here is that we are obviously dealing with a quadratic equation, right? And with a quadratic equation that's in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, you can either solve it by obviously either using the quadratic formula or by just using the process of integration, right? So for time purposes, I would strongly recommend that you guys use this method that I'm going to be using, right? So you are just going to put two brackets, okay, which is equal to 0, okay? So you're going to, obviously you've got an x squared there, so you're going to put an x there, and you're going to put another x there, right? And then we're going to look at this sign here, right? This sign is going to tell us whether we're going to have two negatives, two positives, or a negative and a positive, right? Because we've got a negative, that tells us that the two signs that you must use is a positive and a negative, right? And then we are going to look at the factors of 20, right? That when I add or subtract them will give me a negative 1. Okay, so what are those factors of 20 that when I add or subtract them will give us a negative 1? It's going to be a positive 4 and a negative 5. Okay, so you can just simply check negative 5 plus 4 gives us a negative 1. Okay, and positive 4 multiplied by negative 5 gives us a negative 20. Right, so from there we can just see that we've already factorized this quadratic equation. Therefore, your x is equal to negative 4 or your x is equal to 5. We are done. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Question 1.1.2. We are given 3x squared minus 2x minus 6, which is equal to 0, right? And here, obviously, we're still solving for x. And guys, they give us a hint here, right? This hint is saying that we need to correct this question, this answer to two decimal places. Guys, when you see this, this tells you that if you're solving for x or you're required to solve for x and you've got a quadratic equation that's in the general form or the general form of ax squared plus bx plus c, right? Okay, so if you're given an equation like so, or a quadratic equation that is in that form, and they tell you to correct it to two decimal places, guys, you need to have a light bulb moment, and you need to remember that that means that I'm supposed to use the quadratic formula here, because if you're going to try and use the method that we used here to solve this quadratic equation, you're not going to get very far. Okay, so here we just know that we're going to use the quadratic formula and we are basically done. All right, so let's just do that. Okay, so with the quadratic formula, like I said, for you to be able to use the quadratic formula, your quadratic equation needs to be in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, which is equal to 0, right? So as you can see, this equation is in that form. Okay, so from here, what can we see, guys? We can see that our a is equal to 3, right? So this is our a, the coefficient of our x squared. Our b is equal to negative 2, and our c is c for constants, which is our negative 6. Okay, so that's that. And then we are simply going to substitute, okay, these values into our quadratic formula, which is given to you guys in your formula sheet. Okay, so I'm just going to show you guys where you can get it in your formula sheet. So as you can see, that's your quadratic formula that's given to you guys in your formula sheet. So you don't have to stress yourself about like remembering the formula, but I always advocate for learners to just remember these things so that it makes your life simpler and easier. Okay, so what is the quadratic formula? So the quadratic formula is x is equal to minus b plus minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, right? So we're going to simply just substitute the values that I've written here. Okay, so when you punch that into the calculator, you get that your x is equal to 1 plus the square root of 19 all over 3, or your x is equal to 1 minus the square root of 19 all over 3, right? And guys, in the question, they're telling us that you need to correct this answer to 2 decimal places, right? So obviously they're telling us we need to leave it in a decimal form, right? So from there, we need to basically press the SD button, and that's going to give you the 2x values as x is equal to 1.79, or your x is equal to negative 1.12. Right, so that's the answer that we get when we obviously round it off to 2 decimal places. Okay guys, and we are basically done. Moving on to the next question. Question 1.3. We are given x open bracket x minus 1 all squared is greater than 9. Okay, so for this question, guys, we can already see that we have an inequality, like it's an inequality equation, right? So we need to think, obviously when you're dealing with an inequality, you need to think critical values, you need to think number line, you need to think putting your critical values on your number line, and obviously moving forward from there. All right, so let's get started and see how we tackle this problem. Okay, so you've got x minus 1 all squared, which is greater than 9. Guys, please do not make the mistakes. I'm going to do this in yellow, okay? Because this is actually a silly mistake that I myself did. So I'm just going to point it out so that someone else does not make the same mistake. Please do not, obviously, someone is going to be tempted to do this. Sorry. Someone is going to be tempted to do this. Right, thinking that if I can cancel out this 2, then I'll just be left with the x minus 1, and then I'll be left with the 3. From there, I can just say x minus 1 is greater than 3, move the negative 1 to the other side, and I've got like a 4. And therefore this, please do not make this mistake. All right, what you're going to do is, guys, you are literally going to distribute this bracket, right? You have to distribute this bracket. Okay, so let's look at the correct solution for this. Okay, so I had to point that out because I really feel like someone is just gonna want to make that mistake, and not on my account. Okay, so like I'm saying, guys, you have to distribute this bracket. By distributing, obviously you know that you have to say x minus 1 is greater than 9, right? So by distributing, I mean that you need to multiply these values out, right? But just like a quick method that you guys can use, because obviously you will be in an exam or test an exam, and you need to start finding like quick ways for you guys to solve your equations, right? So what you can do is, okay, you can just simply, okay, so let's just move on there, right? So this is just a quick method that you can use to help you distribute this bracket. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to square the first square the first term, right? Okay, so let's just do that. Square the first term. When you square it, you get x squared, right? Multiply these two terms together, right? And when you multiply them together, you get a negative. So when you multiply these two terms together, you get a negative x, right? And you double this, right? So this multiplied by 2, right? So it's going to be negative 2x. And then you square this last term. So when you square negative, so negative 1 all squared is equal to positive 1. All right. And we've basically distributed this bracket quickly, okay? And then from here, what do we do? Obviously, for you to be able to solve this quadratic inequality, you need to have a 0 on your right hand side, right? So you're going to move this this positive 9 to the left hand side, right? So when you move it to the left hand side, it becomes a negative 9. So you're going to have x squared minus 2x plus 1 minus 9 is greater than 0. Okay, simply add your like terms. You're going to be left with x squared minus 2x plus 1 minus 9 is negative 8. Okay, so it's negative 8, which is greater than 0. And then from here, guys, you can simply solve this using obviously the process of inspection if you really want to be fast. But if you're not really comfortable with this method, you can still use the quadratic formula, guys. But I mean, let's just get into the habit of using this method because it just makes life so much easier, right? We've got x squared, so you're going to put the two x's there. Okay, we've got a negative there. So because we've got a negative, that means that we must have a plus and a minus, right? And then what are the factors of 8 that when I plus or minus them will give me a negative 2? Positive 2 and negative 4, right? Let's just double check that. I'm going to use the yellow to just illustrate that we're checking. So if you take a plus 2 minus 4, what do you get? You get a negative 2. And then if you take plus 2 multiplied by negative 4, what do you get? You get a negative 8. So we know that obviously the factors or the values that we've put there are correct. Okay, guys, so from here we can just obviously get our critical values. So our critical values are obviously x, which is equal to negative 2, and x, which is equal to 4. Okay, so guys, like I had mentioned, if you've watched my inequality, the video where I explained how you basically solve a quadratic inequality equation, right? If you the first thing you need to get is you need to get your critical values. After you've obtained your critical values, you need to put these critical values on a number line. So that is exactly what I'm going to be doing. So we got our critical values to be negative 2 and 4. Okay, so I'm just going to check that, negative 2 and 4. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put these critical values on a number line. Okay, so it's negative 2 and 4. So that's our negative 2 and that's our 4 there. And then looking at our equation, obviously it's just greater than. We don't have that and equal to sign. So that just tells us that we've got an open bracket, all right, in the top of our number line, at the top of our critical values. So we've got that open circle there, right? Now we want to determine where this quadratic function is greater than, right? Where it's greater than 0. Okay, so what we need to do is, right, so you can use this method. Okay, so you're going to substitute a value that is higher than your highest critical value, which is 4. So if you substitute 5 into your original equation, let me just take you guys back to the original equation. So if you substitute a value that is higher than your highest critical value, so we need to look at a value, look for a number that is higher than the highest critical value, right? So a number that's going to be greater than 4. So it can be 5, it can be 6, it can be 7, so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to choose 5. And once you've got that value, you're going to go back to the equation that you've obtained, right? Where you've got obviously the 0 on the right hand side of the equation, right? And you're going to substitute that 5 into this equation and see if you get a positive or a negative value, right? So you're going to substitute 5 all squared minus 2 times 5 minus 8, right? And we get a positive value, okay? So how does that positive value help us? It tells us that on this side, of our number line, the function will always be positive, right? Okay, and then from there you can just alternate your sign. Just as a check, you can just also check values, any value that is between negative 2 and 4, substitute it into the equation. All right, so and then I said that basically what you do is you alternate your signs. Since you got a positive, that must be a negative, and that must be a positive, right? So you can also check if this is correct, if your signs are correct, right? by just substituting a value between negative 2 and 4. Let's say if we take 0 and you substitute that 0 back into this equation and check to see if you do in fact get a negative. And from here, if you substitute 0 into x squared, it's 0 minus 0 minus 8. So 0 minus 0 minus 8, that means that you have a minus 8, right? Therefore, that sign is correct. And let's also just do a double check for this one. Let's say we take a value between negative 2 and negative infinity. Let me go with negative 4. And when you substitute negative 4 into this equation, you should get a positive value. Let's just quickly do that. So if it's negative 4 all squared minus 2 negative 4 minus 8, you get a positive 16. Okay, so that tells us that everything here is correct, and then we can basically proceed with our question, right? So the question was asking for a value that is where this function is greater than, okay, where it's greater than 0. And from what we can see here, we can see that this function is greater than 0 when x is greater than 4. And this function is also greater than 0 when your x is less than. Okay, so that is how our answer will look on a number line, or you can just simply write it as this function is greater than 0 when x is less than negative 2. Okay, or when x is greater than 4. If you'd like the answer in interval notation, then it would be obviously from negative infinity to negative 2, or when x is equal to open bracket 4 to positive infinity. Alright guys, so that is question 1.1.3. We are done. Alright, question 1.1.4 is you're given to multiply by the square root of x plus 6 plus 2, which is equal to x, and we are still solving for x here. So what do we do here? So to solve this question, we're going to have 2 square roots of x plus 6. We're going to basically take this 2 to the right hand side, and it's going to be x minus 2, right? And then from here, we can see that we can basically divide by this 2 here. Okay, so we can have this value that is under the square root and the square root on its own. Okay, so you have to divide by 2. So when you divide by 2, you're going to be left with x plus 6, which is equal to x, I'll just say over 2 minus 1. 2 over 2 is the same as saying 1, right? And then from here, we can see that we can just get rid of this square root. And to get rid of it, what do? You square it, right? So you square it. And when you square it, you will be left with x plus 6, which is equal to x over 2 minus 1 whole squared. Right, so from here, guys, it actually becomes very simple, okay, and this becomes simple for us to solve, because we know that we basically need to distribute what's on the right hand side, and we can basically take what's on the left hand side and take it to the right hand side and solve for x, right? So let's just distribute what is on our right hand side and see what we get. So like I said, guys, just to save time, what we do is you square the first term. So if you take x over 2 all squared, what do you get? You'll have x over 2 times 2 is 4, right? Minus, okay, we'll keep that sign here. We're going to multiply these two terms together. So this term and this term, you're going to multiply them together, and you are going to double the answer that you get, okay? So it's going to be x over 2 multiplied by negative 1 you're going to have negative x over 2. And then that answer, you're going to double it. Okay, so double it, you can double something by multiplying it by 2. So that is your answer. Okay, these two cancel each other, and you'll literally just be left with minus x. Okay, minus x. And then what do you do with the last term? You are going to square this last term, which is negative 1. And when you square negative 1, what do you get? You get a positive 1. Okay, so this is basically what we're working with on our right hand side, and on our left hand side you still have that x plus 6. So you're going to write x plus 6, right? And then guys, we are simply going to either move these values to the left hand side, or we're going to move these values to the right hand side. We need a 0. We need to get this quadratic equation in its standard or general form. Okay, and to get it into its standard or general form, or the standard form, it needs to be in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, so that we can solve for a. So I'm just going to move everything to the right hand side and have my 0 on the left hand side. So it's going to be 0 is equal to, I'm just going to rewrite x squared all over 4 minus x plus 1 minus x, right? Because this x is moving to the right hand side, minus x, and minus 6, because this is also going to move to the right hand side. Okay, and guys, let's just simplify this equation by adding all our like terms. I'm going to move 1 over 4, right? Minus x is minus 2x, and plus 1 minus 6 is minus, and we basically have our answer. We've got a quadratic equation that's in its general form, sorry, not standard form, general form. And then from here we can simply use the quadratic formula to solve for our x. That quarter there, so that's our a. Our b is negative 2, and our c is minus 5. Punch that into your calculator using this formula. Okay guys, so take those values that I've given you and simply substitute them into this formula to get your value of your x's, right? So if you do that, x is equal to 10, or your x is equal to negative 2. Okay, so we said that our a is equal to a quarter, our b is negative 2, and our c is negative 5. And when we substitute these values that we got into our quadratic formula, we found that our value of x is equal to 10, or x is equal to negative 2. Okay, but guys, we are not done, right? We are not done. Looking at the question, right? What do we see about this question? It's got values on the left hand side and it's got values on the right hand side initially, right? So if you have an equation that's in this form where there's something on the left hand side and there's something on the right hand side, it tells you that when you've calculated the value of your x, you need to check whether those x values, or the value that you get on the left hand side, is equal to the value that you get on the right hand side. You need to make that check. So like you see here, there's a value on the left hand side and there's a value on the right hand side, right? So you need to basically check that what is on our left hand side is equal to what is on our right hand side. And if that is valid, or if that is true, that means that the x values that you've obtained are correct. So we're just going to quickly do that check and then we will be done. Okay, we found that the value of x, we found that x to be equal to 10 and your x to be equal to, we found x is equal to 10, or we found that your x is equal to negative 2. Okay, so we need to check this. So we're going to start off with the x, which is equal to 10, and we are going to substitute it into this equation. All right, so it's 2, where you see your x, you're going to put it 10, so it's 10 plus 6 plus 2, and that should also be equal to 10. Okay, so when you punch that into your calculator, what do you get? You find that your left hand side is equal to 10 and your right hand side is also equal to 10. So this tells us that this x value is valid, right? So now let's go on and check this x, which is equal to negative 2. Okay, so x is equal to negative 2. That's what we're checking. So when you see an x in your original equation, you're going to substitute a negative 2. 2 plus 6 plus 2, which is equal to negative 2. Okay, punch that into your calculator. Already here, we see that we've got a problem. We've got 6 is equal to negative 2, alright? So this is not valid, okay? So this tells us that it cannot be equal to negative 2. And guys, we literally get a mark for showing this on your paper. Alright guys, so that is it. Let's move on to solving our simultaneous equations. So let's move on to question 1.2, where we are required to solve simultaneously for x and y, given 4x plus y is equal to 2, and given 4x plus y squared, which is equal to 8. Okay, so let's get cracking with that. Also, guys, just tell me, do you prefer the black background, or do you prefer a white background? Do you want it black, or do you want it white? Okay, let's try working on a white background so that you guys can just also just tell me what you guys prefer, and let's get started. All right, so we are required to solve this equation simultaneously, given 4x plus y, which is equal to 2, and 4x plus y squared, which is equal to 8. All right, guys, when it's obviously doing simultaneous equation, you need to have an equation 1 where you've basically isolated either the x or the y, right? And you need to have an equation 2, which is usually the equation that you're basically going to leave alone and substitute the other equation into that equation. So let me show you what I mean, right? So I'm going to focus on this equation and I'm going to isolate the y. So having the y on its own on the left hand side, right? So making this y, or leaving the y on its own on the right hand side, I'm going to be left with y, which is equal to 2 minus 4x. I feel like this is better to work with, right? So this is going to be called my equation 1, and this is going to be called my equation 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to substitute the equation 1 into equation 2, right? So we're going to take equation 2, which is 4. Where you see your y, right? Where you see y, you are going to substitute this, okay? So it's going to be 4x plus 2 minus 4x all squared, which is equal to 8, all right? And then we are simply going to solve this equation, okay? So it's going to be 4x plus, square the first term, it's going to be 4. Multiply these two terms together, it's going to be, you're going to keep this sign, you're going to bring this sign down, multiply these two terms together, okay? So 4 times 2 is 8, and 8, and then you double the 8, so 8 times 2 is 16, okay? So it's going to be 16x, and then you're going to square this last term, okay? So when you square the last term, it's 4 times 4 is positive 16x squared equal to 8. I really love this method because it makes it quick for us to solve the problem, okay? I'm just going to remove the bracket because you just have a positive there. So everything that's in the bracket remains the same. So you're going to be left with 4x plus 4 minus 16x plus 16x squared, which is equal to 8. And then guys, let's start off by solving or adding our like terms that are on the left hand side. Do you have any like terms? Let's start off with the 16, so it's positive 16x squared. We're going to write that as it is, so it's going to be 16x squared, right? And then you've got a 4x minus 16. Positive 4 minus 16 is going to give you a minus 12x, and plus 4, which is equal to 8. Right? And then from here, guys, you can just simply take this 8 to the left hand side, and you're going to be left with 16x squared minus 12x plus 4 minus 8 is minus 4, which is equal to 0. Okay, and then from here, guys, you can simply use the quadratic formula. I feel like this paper, like, yeah, we've been using this quadratic formula, where this is the A, okay, this is the B, this is the C, and when you substitute these values into your quadratic formula, you find that, okay, so you're going to substitute the minus, the B is minus 12, okay. So from here, when you substitute these values straight into your calculator, you'll find that your x is equal to 1, or your x is equal to negative 1 over 4. Right? So we've already solved for our x, right? So now what we have to do is we're going to go back to, okay, we're going to go back to our original equations, and then you're going to substitute this x value either into our equation 1 or into our equation 2 and get the y value, right? So, and I'm thinking that we can substitute this value into our equation 1, because from there it will really be simple. So we can just do that quickly, okay? So we're going to substitute these x values into our equation 1, which is this equation. And then when we substitute them, we find that when you substitute x, which is equal to 1, your y is equal to 2 minus 4 times 1. What is our y? And when you substitute x, which is equal to negative 1 over 4. Okay, so simply quickly punch that into your calculator, and let's check what our y is. You find that your y is equal to negative 2 here. And here we found that your y is equal to 3. Okay. And then, guys, we are not done. Remember, I mentioned that if you are given something on the left-hand side and something on the right-hand side, that tells you that when you check, when you get your final answer, you need to check to see that the values that you obtained actually make sense. Okay? Check that the values that you obtained are actually valid. Okay? So we need to check that the values that we obtain for the 2 x's that we obtained and the 2 y's that we've obtained are actually correct by checking that what's on our left hand side is equal to what's on our right hand side. You can either check it with this equation or you can check it with that equation. Okay, so I'm going to check it with the equation 4x plus y, which is equal to 0. Okay, so let's just quickly do that. So we found that, I'm going to write it like this. We found that when our x is equal to 1, our y is equal to negative 2, right? And on the other side, we found that when your x is equal to negative 1 over 4, your y is equal to 3. So this is what we're checking. We're checking to see if these answers are correct. And I said that I was going to substitute them into the equation 4x, okay? So 4x plus y, which is equal to 2. So we're just checking that both of these, we're checking to see if these values and these values are actually correct. Okay, we're checking. This is how you check, so that when you leave the exam, you know that you've nailed it. You've nailed it. Okay. So anyway, so you take the 4. We're gonna substitute. So if you take 4, where you've got x, you're gonna put 1, and where you've got y, you're gonna substitute the negative 2. And this should be equal to what's on our right hand side. Simply take your calculator. 4 times 1 plus minus 2, you get 2. So you see that 2 is equal to 2, guys. Here we know that we are winning. Already we know that that answer is correct. Let's move on to the next one. You're still checking here as well. I'm going to use the 4x plus y, which is equal to 2. Where you see your x, you're going to substitute the negative 1 over 4. And then where you see your y, you're going to substitute 3. And the left-hand side should be equal to 2. So 4 times negative 1 over 4 plus 3 is equal to, guys, at this point, you've got confidence. At this point in your exam, you are like smiling because you know that you know your work. Okay, and then guys, we are basically done. Solving simultaneously for x and y, we got that your x is equal to 1 and y is equal to negative 2, and you found that your x is equal to negative 1 over 4 and your y is equal to 3. Right, we are done. Let us move on to the next question. Alright, so let's have a look at question 1.3. If it is given that 2 to the power of x times 3 to the power of y is equal to 24 to the power of 6, determine the numerical value of x minus y. Alright, so the first question you might be asking yourself is, how am I going to even approach this question? Okay, so guys, with this question, it's pretty simple. All you need to be able to see is that you are working with exponential. Like, this is an exponential equation, right? So with an exponential equation, all you need to be able to realize is that because we've got a 2 and a 3 as bases on the left hand side, you probably need to have a 2 and a 3 as a base on the right hand side, right? And what we know about exponents is if you've got the same bases, then you can drop the exponents and it becomes pretty easy to solve for the x and the y. Okay, so let's basically see, let's try that method and see how it goes. So we're given one, this is 1.3, we've got 2 to the power of x multiplied by 3 to the power of y, which is equal to 24 to the power of 6. Alright, so what we see here, guys, is that we have to write out this 24. We need to expand this 24, right? So let's try and do that. So you've got 2 to the power of x multiplied by 3 to the power of y, which is equal to, how can we expand 24? Okay, so we can think probably 8 multiplied by 3 is equal to 24. How did I get that? What I thought is, I'm thinking of a base. So obviously I started with 2. If you say 2 to the power of 2, you get 4, right? Okay, if you say 2 to the power of 3, you get 8. If you say 2 to the power of 4, you get 16. And if you say 2 to the power of 5, you get 32. Okay, so this one is obviously not going to work for us, right? But then if you work with then I was thinking to myself, okay, let me see, maybe if I say 2 to the power of, I need to multiply probably this with that. Maybe if I get 24, then I can pack that into this equation, right? So 8 times what will give me 24? Because we already know that 2 to the power of 3 is equal to 8. If I say 8 times 4, what's 8 times 4? 8 times 4 is equal to 32. I mean, 8 times 4 is equal to 32, right? So that's not going to help us. So we either need to introduce a base 3, and that is going to help us get something. 3 to the power of 1 is equal to 3. And if you take 2 to the power of, or the 8, multiplied by 3, you get 24. So that's practically what we need to substitute into. Oh, those are the two values that we need to use to help us expand 24. That will give us the same basis that we have on our left hand side. So let us do that, guys. All right. So what I did is, you can just say 8 multiplied by 3. 8 multiplied by 3 is equal to 24, guys. We're going to put that to the power of 6. Then you're going to have 2 to the power of x multiplied by 3 to the power of y, which is equal to, then we still need to expand that 8. How do you expand the 8? To expand 8, we said 2 to the power of 3 is the same as 8, right? So you're going to have 2 to the power of 3 multiplied by the 3 to the power of 1, because you can't expand the 3 further. And then what do we see here, guys, is that we are getting somewhere, because we have the base 2 and 3 on the left hand side, and we've got the base 2 and 3 on the right hand side. But we still need to get rid of this 6, right? So how do you get rid of it? We basically multiply it inside, okay? So let's just multiply it inside. So you got 2 to the power of x multiplied by 3 to the power of y, which is equal to 3 multiplied by 6 is equal to 18. So it's going to be 2 to the power of 18 multiplied by 3. 1 multiplied by 6 is equal to 6. Alright. And then from here, what do we see? We've got a base 2 on the left hand side. We've got a base 2 on the right hand side. So we can simply equate these two together. So it's 2 to the power of x is equal to 2 to the power of 18. And we also have a base 3 on the left hand side. And we've got a base 3 on the right hand side. So we're going to equate these two together. So it's going to be 3 to the power of y, which is equal to 3 to the power of 6. And then what do we know from exponential laws is that if you have the same bases, you can drop the exponent. Same base, you drop the exponent. So that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to drop the exponent. Alright, so you're going to have x is equal to 18 and y is equal to 6, because we simply dropped these exponents because our bases are the same. Okay, so what was the question asking from us again? It was asking us to determine the numerical value of x minus y. And from here, guys, we already found our x to be 18 and we already found our y to be 6. And then we simply substitute those values into this equation. X minus y is equal to 18 minus 6, which is equal to 12. We are done. We are literally done. Okay, we are passing this test. We are done. So that is basically it, guys. With this question, it was basically using it as a word problem that was testing to see if you know how to apply your exponential laws. So that is it, guys. If you enjoyed how I explained question 1 of the June 2021 Mathematics Paper 1, please make sure that you click on that subscribe button and also hit the notification bell so that you do get notified every time I upload a new video. And then for question 2 and the other questions from this paper, they'll be under the June 2021 Mathematics Paper 1 playlist that will be on my channel. So just have a look at that if you feel like you want to just follow all the questions and you like the way that I approach the problems, then you'll find them under that playlist. That is it, guys. See you on my next upload where we make mathematics super easy.